has a shot, but it goes the other way.
Libas.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Wednesday Week.
A little bit older than you.
I'm not touching this topic. I'm not touching it.
Yeah. Mediocre, mid-table, rabble.
So I just want to be able to talk as much
If he
crap.
play a night game, he has to turn the floodlights on.
No one would have believed that he would keep his job for as long as he had.
I'll tell you what, it's great to be back. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Hello from the Other Side, the Wednesday Week preview podcast, where each week we end up talking to fans of our upcoming opponents to see what we can expect from the game that we've got coming up. On this week's show, I'm very glad to be welcoming Ben from Argyle Life podcast, I believe it is. Evening, Ben. How are you doing?
Evening. Looking forward to some championship football getting started, that's for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Sort of preempted the question that I've got, which is, are you happy and up for getting back to some regulation football after the Euros?
Absolutely. If nothing else, just to put us out of our misery at Argyle and see what it's like under Wayne Rooney. So just get it over and done with. Are we going to surprise ourselves and surprise everyone, or are we going to fulfill everyone's predictions and absolutely suck? At least we get to find out pretty soon.
Well, I'm sure we'll get into it, as I said, and the boss would shoot me if I didn't play this, but we are here. It's not our standard Wednesday Week podcast, but we are here for our Hello from the Other Side. So here we go.
Hello from the other side.
You can tell that he's had a lot of time off this summer because that graphic is absolutely banging. Do you get this on the Argyle Life, mate?
Absolutely not. I'm going to words with Aaron, the ringmaster of our circus. He's a graphic designer and all. We should have more of this sort of content.
The levels that these guys go to are absolutely unreal. I'm just here to press the buttons. But as we said, we're going to get into it. So before we start and we start looking forward, so let's look backwards a little bit. Can you give us a rundown on 23-24? Now, I feel like as a Wednesdayite and Plymouth with a little bit of Ipswich chucked in there, we've had a couple of seasons where we've kind of been intertwined with each other for the last sort of 2-3 years, where we've been ebbing and flowing at the top end of the League One, and then obviously things happened sort of 22-23 on both sides of things. But coming into the start of last season, how did things go for you? Give us a rundown of season 23-24 from a Plymouth point of view.
It was something of a roller coaster. It was really quite Hollywood. Obviously, winning the league, coming under Stephen Schumacher, who's quite a savvy young manager. We were expecting that we could do all right, even with like the lowest budget in the league. Perhaps Rotherham had the same, but we were sort of joint lowest budget in the league. But we had the sort of the savvy of the recruitment team who've been sort of nailing it pretty well. Mumbo and Whitaker and Azaz, these are the guys they've been bringing in on loan and then able to get back permanently, etc. And Schumacher himself, quite a savvy operator. So we're sort of thinking, although we're again a small fish in a big pond, we've got a good chance, especially as there were teams like Wednesday, UPR, Rotherham, Huddersfield, who looked in various different ways, absolute basket cases. You're aware of your situation better than us, but we basically had to be better than 3 of the basket cases. And as the season started, we did all right, but we were, the situation looked a lot more pleasant because there were certain teams really struggling. Obviously Rotherham dropped away quite quickly. You guys were down there with QPR. When you guys started picking up form, that sort of coincided with us, with Schumacher going to Stoke. I remember, we beat you guys at Home Park, but you could already see Roll had been there just a few weeks. You could already see the improvement. Already see, you weren't the same disjointed, disorganized side that you were already. I wouldn't have guessed how well it did go, to be fair, but you could see that there was already a turnaround. And we lost Schumacher to Stoke in just before Christmas, January, just after Christmas, and lost also 2 key loan players who went back in Azaz and Kundal, leaving us with big holes. And other teams around us started performing, so that wasn't very fun. Ian Foster's regime wasn't very fun. The director of football and the coach, Kevin Nanscoville, one of the coaches here, who sort of like a permanent fixture here. Whoever comes through, as head coach, he's always around the building. They both took over as caretakers and really got, pulled it out of the bag, snatched it out of the fire at the end of the season and kept us up. So it was a real roller coaster from a decent start with a lot of optimism to worries of going down. And it was quite a high tide to stay up, wasn't it? In the end, 51 points. So all in all, successful. If you'd have asked Argyle fans at the start of the season, would you take staying up on the last day? They'd have probably most of them snapped your hand off because of the nature of the beast. Now we've got a bit of TV money in the back pocket, and hopefully, starting to be able to compete with the big boys financially to a certain degree. That's if we don't go down having appointed, the guy with probably the worst period of management of any club, any division last season of the EFL. So last season was, delighted to stay up. I think we learned a lot of lessons, both the fans and the board, hopefully, you'd think, despite the appointment. But yeah, it's going to be a bit tough ask to try and do it again because there's not half as many basket cases this time round, are there, than there were that last season come up. Even Oxford have good money behind them.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to know where I want to pull at the Ian Foster thread a little bit, if that's all right. I don't want to dwell too much on it, but he'd gone in there and it just didn't seem to work out. Can you pinpoint exactly what happened there? What went wrong, or was it just wrong place, wrong time?
Possibly. There's a lot of hearsay that a lot of it seems to have a lot of truth to it. That I don't know if you follow American sports, but there's often a type of coach who's very successful in college sports in America will go into the big leagues and kind of treat players like they're college athletes. That doesn't go down very well. And I think Foster, there was a little bit of that about Ian Foster. He came in with the ideas that he was going to sort of maybe lay down the law and professionalize already professional athletes. And that didn't sit too well with the dressing room. I think he had favourites. I think that there were, he throws out some really popular members of the squad who actually proved pivotal in the run-in when he is gone. Guys who, like for example, Callum Wright, who provided the assist for the scorer, Joe Edwards, our club captain, the goal that kept us up on the last day. They were both frozen out under him. So I feel there was a combination between the way he lost the dressing room, but his tactics were also not appropriate for a team that isn't as good as its opponents. It's the sort of tactics that they work great if you've got the better team, because obviously any tactics are all right when you've got the better team, but they're kind of like low risk tactics, which are great when you can beat the opposition because you've got the better squad. You can play low risk, not going to lose the ball, not going to see. For example, just to contextualize, his under 18s Euros winning team, I think they scored something like 28 goals and conceded 2 in all their games for that competition. And it's like, that's great if you've got the best players in the world. You play really low risk, boring football that breaks away and scores exciting goals when you've exposed the weakness. Doesn't work when your squad is one of the weakest in the league because people can contain you. You don't get to make those breakaway goals. You don't get to open up the holes with the passing and movement. We scored so few goals during the end of his tenure, and teams are good enough to get through us and score 1 or 2 themselves. So he was trying to sort of nick games 1 or 2-0. We weren't equipped for that. He just didn't seem to get the squad even that he's got. The squad he'd got was built for attacking football, and sometimes you have to modulate, don't you, as an incoming manager, your tactics, your philosophy for the equipment that you've got. For the players you've got. That's what Rooney didn't do at Birmingham, arguably. Didn't modify his tactics for what he had. And we're hoping that can happen again. There's a similar kind of situation happening at the start of this season, to be honest. But yeah, I think that was Foster's problem. He just didn't adapt, and he didn't look after. I think he came in with a bit too much of an idea of what he was going to achieve, rather than trying to learn why things were as they were.
Yeah, it kind of leads me into the next point that I was going to get to, though. You touched on Rooney there and his approach at Birmingham, which it wasn't great, and I'm sure we'll come back to it a little bit later in the chat. But if you look at his record, I think he's got a career in 150 odd games, he's got a win ratio of about 26%. It's on paper, it doesn't look great. How's the mood down at Plymouth with him coming in? How's the feeling down there?
Well, we're used to being sort of us against the world. It's kind of like a club ethos almost. So the fans will back Rooney, at least until it's clear that he's out of his depth. He will have the backing of the fans. They won't turn early, but there's still a lot of suspicion that he's not going to be up to it. So it's more hope than faith, I think, amongst the fan base. We hope that, because even bad decisions can come off, but it doesn't mean it's a good decision. You can run across a road full of traffic and not get hit. That doesn't mean it's a good decision just because it worked out all right, And I feel like that's kind of where we are with Rooney. I think that, as you've said, the evidence point. The noise out of the club is that he interviewed really well, and he's very personable. He builds good relationships, and and anecdotally, players who've been at Derby, DC, Birmingham, even Birmingham, say that he's nice to be. He's got good personal skills. He's good to be around. That's not all there is to being a manager, and it feels like he interviewed well, and the club was kind of lost in the the allure rather than the actual record. And the problem with the record is it trends downwards. If he had a decent spell and mediocre spell and a tragic spell, and they weren't in that order, you could make a case for, if it was the other way around, if you had Birmingham, DC, and then the Derby spell, wouldn't be a problem, because the results at Derby in adverse conditions were all right, and it would be, but it's trending the wrong way. And you'd think lessons should be getting learnt rather than the other way around. So, the mood is.
Was there anybody else in the frame? Sorry, I've cut you off there. Was there anybody else in the frame lined up for it?
Yeah, there were four that made the shortlist and went to final interview. We're led to believe that there were a few who also would have made the shortlist, but either got jobs or decided against it. And I think Heckingbottom was one of the ones that was strongly linked as being a candidate, and why that one fell through, whether it was he wasn't happy with the way the board were, or whether he actually did get to the final four, we don't know. But that is a name that I think the owner sort of gave credence to, having been a genuine rumour. Right. And that, that's just so disappointing as a fan to think you could have had Paul Heckingbottom, a safe pair of hands in the Championship. And when they went for Wayne Rooney, it's hard to justify. The owner came out and gave like an interview. Like, it's not an interview; it's basically the club asking him the questions that he'd written, and he sort of responded as if it was an interview. But sort of explaining the logic behind it, and there's massive flaws in the logic behind a point. I actually just wrote like a 2,500 word piece for our website on it, on sort of like the logical holes. Like for example, the owner said, he was sort of compelled to play a certain way at Birmingham, but like Rooney himself, he's speaking to what's the Gary Neville podcast called? Stick to Football. He's speaking, it's like 6 weeks after he got fired, they released an episode with him, and he was saying like, when I came in at Birmingham, my philosophy and their philosophy, how they wanted the team to play, it was all lined up, and it's all me. So even after he got sacked, he was saying that I was forced to do it. It was my philosophy. So has he told in interview that he was forced to, or are they making that assumption? Because all you've got to do is go and watch the podcast and you find out he says he wasn't forced to. So it's either really bad due diligence or being naive, and that's not good, is it? For when you're a club and you see your boards coming out with public statements saying stuff which you can fact check against podcasts as the reasoning behind the making appointments, is just it makes you worried. So if they'd come out and given really solid bulletproof reasoning behind why they'd gone for him, then I feel like we could all sit a bit more comfortable. But yeah, it feels like a bit of a vibes appointment, really, more than anything, and I'm sort of hoping it. Not hopeful.
Listen,
not hopeful.
After the years that we've had with our batshit crazy chairman, we've stumbled on an appointment that I think if you ask 99.9% of neutrals, the Mind Wednesday fans, they'd say we've stumbled on something pretty special. So whilst it's not great for you, it's nice to hear that we're talking to a podcast where things are a little bit more uncertain, and the things that you're saying at the moment are quite familiar in terms of where we were last season and where we've been in years previous. So
Yeah.
sorry about that.
No, it's funny because for years we are the same. You know, we've been held up as a paragon of like how to run a club. You know, brilliant chairman,
Yeah.
etc. And it's
Yeah.
quite funny. We look at clubs like you and go, "Thank goodness we haven't got a chance here," you know. And then he goes and pulls a roll out of the hat, and it's like, oh, okay. And then we start, you know, so just be careful not to. Carefully you're laughing at, lest you end up in the same boat, really. So yeah, it's quite ironic for us having been touted, you know, across the media as being an example of how to run a club, etc. And advance might be backsliding and losing that well-earned reputation.
Yeah, the vibe at Wednesday at the moment is unlike anything that I can remember, and I've been a fan of Wednesday for nearly 40 years now. You know, mid 80s was the first game that I went to. It's not been since the Premier League days, the Premiership days, as it was then, of Trevor Francis 1993 Cup finals. It's that sort of level of optimism that we're feeling at the moment, and it's really, really positive. The only worry that we've got is that we've stumbled across a coach who's going to get international recognition very, very quickly because of the players he's worked with, the teams that he's worked with as well. He's not long for South Yorkshire. He's not, and we just need him to be in a situation, or need him to leave us in a situation that when he does get picked up by a bigger team, that we are stable. The chairman doesn't lose his head, and we're now in that position where, like yourselves, we can then kick on and say, right, well, we're going to replace almost like for like, or we've got a model going in where we're going to attract a similar sort of stature of coach to take us on to the next level. And I'm really positive, feeling really positive, and I'm really hopeful that that's something that we can do in terms of, the next steps and sort of future proof in our club. So, for us at the moment, it's a really positive sort of thing. What does your pre-season look like then? We've talked about Rooney, we've talked about coming in. How's pre-season gone for you?
I mean, it's hard to base anything off the results, but I think we drew against Orlando Pirates first game, beat Cheltenham 5-1, beat Torquay 2-0, lost 2-1 to Bristol Rovers, although had a whole bunch of chances that sort of hit the post and all that sort of stuff. But it was a low tempo game, and then we won 1-0 last game against
MK Dons. MK Dons. Yeah, I've
1-0.
done my research.
Ultimately, it was been about trying to get the philosophy onto the pitch, I think, and into the players more than the results. The results have been all right. Been nice to see some of the new players and what they're capable of. Sissoko on loan from Toulouse looks like a handful. His numbers say he's absolutely devilish with his dribble and his carry, but does he produce the end product? I guess that's what he's come here to try and learn. And the manager, Paul, helped with that, to be fair to Rooney, bringing in Sissoko on loan from Toulouse and bringing in Tijani on loan from Slavia Praha with a buy option up front. Absolute unit of a fellow, big frame, but also long-limbed as well. Really big striker, which gives us a different option to Ryan Hardy, who's more of a runner in behind, quite a slender, fast sort of forward, and he got knackered towards the end of the season, which was a big problem for us in our production. So that's that's one of the benefits of Rooney being there. But it was more about trying to get used to the system, which is kind of like a 4-4-2 defensively, 4-2-3-1, 4-1. Yeah, it's quite fluid. The fullbacks invert, although we don't have a right-sided fullback capable really of doing that. It's quite flexible going forward, and it's also quite heavy in the press. It's not kamikaze sort of like Liverpool, Gegen pressing, but it is very intense in the pressing. Problem is, we've gone through such styles of changes with like Schumacher, and then buying players in January for Foster, and then now we've got the squad isn't really equipped to play with a back four particularly well. It's much better set up for a back three with wing backs. Players like Barley Mumba and our captain Joe Edwards, they're much better playing wing back than full back. Not just because of their attacking abilities, but the shape of the bit of the pitch you have to defend is much longer and thinner, isn't it? As a wing back than as a full back, you're covering a more square area of pitch, and you get isolated defensively much more easily. And I don't think we've got real defensive strength. It's kind of like we're putting round pegs in square holes, or is it the other way around? That saying goes.
Either
And
or.
And I kind of wish with the one constant complaint I've heard about Rooney from fans of Derby, DC, and Birmingham is that he's wedded to his kind of philosophy. Bit too much, and they came down to home park. They were 3-1 up and they drew 3-3. We managed to get back into the game when he could have just changed his style a little bit, shut up shop, as the expression goes, and they'd have gone away with the 3 points. And that would have been the difference between a Birmingham staying up and us going last season, to be frank. Now, him coming in and looking at the squad, I'd love him to have looked at the squad and gone, maybe I haven't quite got what I've wanted here. Unlike at Birmingham, the board will back me, give me time. So let me be a little bit flexible, use what I've got here to the best of its ability and what it can do well, use the players, in a back three. That suits them. That suits my wing backs too. And then when I've got players in, after this summer window, then we'll have the January window. Maybe by January, maybe the summer after, I can start really implementing my philosophy and maximise what I've got at the moment. That would have been a nice indication that he'd learned from his time at Birmingham. But we've kind of got a massive hole in the second striker position. We've just bought a right back who apparently is sort of more inclined to, is more fleet of foot and fits the mould of sort of inverting fullback he wants to play. But I just don't know. He's even things like he's brought in Tijani, and it looks like Tijani's going to play as in the starting 11, and Hardy will be the backup. But Hardy was in double figures last season, really good player. You worry how that's going to impact not just his form, but his value as an asset. We're a club that needs to, look after those kind of things. Barley Mumba hasn't had a lot of minutes in pre-season compared to some of the other players in that position, left-sided, either wing or left fullback. Again, joint record transfer just last season. What's going to happen to his form and confidence and value if he's not playing? So I know that when a coach comes in, they have to, implement certain things for their strategy and their ideas to work. But it's kind of like you hope that they can also adapt to to the resources they've got. And I don't feel like Rooney's really done that.
You kind of halfway through your response there, you kind of triggered a question that I had, and it was around the qualities that you have within the squad. And you've touched upon a couple of players there, Barley Mumba, and from a sort of a neutral Plymouth fan, if you like, a Plymouth sort of observer, if you like. Ryan Hardy is a name that I wouldn't say strike fear into the hearts of a Wednesday fan, but we're from afar. You kind of look at your Hardys, your Whittakers, and you think these are players that if they come up on Sunday are going to cause us some problems. If you're sitting here now telling me that there's not even a guarantee that Hardy's going to be starting, do you feel like the squad is in a better position given the overhaul and the transfer activity that has taken place, or is it just trying to find that, get that square peg to fit into that square hole, if you like?
Yeah, ironically, the squad is in a better position. We're better than we finished the season. Whether we're in a better position than we were sort of before we lost Azaz, etc., I don't know. But a team is more than the sum of its parts. And, we've got, like I say, Hardy's not like to start, and then we're going to put someone in the second striker position who doesn't really play that. It'll probably either be our 18-year-old, 19-year-old Freddie Azaka, who's just sort of graduated from the youth scene, or it's going to be Mustafa Bundu, who was he was a summer buy last season when as a bit of an emergency, when we couldn't get Coburn in on loan, when we'd been sort of promised by Borough, you can have him. And then they decided to keep him last minute because their deals fell through. So we kind of like panic bought Mustafa Bundu. And he's a cult favourite, and a great player. He scored the goal against Leicester in that game. I don't know if you watched that on Sky, but when we beat Leicester down here 1-0, he's a nice, but it's not really his natural role. So you've got Ryan Hardy, who's a brilliant striker. He's probably not going to start because Tijani's come in, Rooney's favourite, sort of like he's going to probably start. You've got Hardy on the bench and somebody who's not really suited in the second striker position. Again, one of those situations where you think adapt to what you've got until you've got the personnel. Morgan Whittaker's out wide on the right in a kind of like 3 or 4, depending on how the team has built, how the attack's been built up, and that's not been ineffective. He chipped in across for Sissoko to head in a goal against Cheltenham, but it's not maximizing his strengths either. To drive inside onto his left foot and smash thunderbolts is his sort of trademark. And having him wide right, pinging in balls with his weak foot just seems a waste of talent. So there's a lot of questions to be asked. The squad, ironically, is good, and or better. And I think a manager who'd be more willing to work to the strengths of his players would get more out of it than I'm afraid we're going to against you on Sunday. Hopefully, Rooney will be willing to adapt with time when he sees the results and things. But if we have the time to let him do that, I'm not sure. But yeah, I think you guys can be quietly confident, to be honest. I think you guys have honed what looking at your squad, looking at your transfer business. I wasn't that impressed to begin with, and then slowly you've sort of, the road twins coming in and the low twins rather, and if there's a lot of good sound business, then you can see, I see where that's going. I see how that's developing, and at Argyle, the players he brought in are sort of this summer. I don't see where they're improving the squad as a composite unit, if that makes sense. They might be good players, but it doesn't work with everything else that's there.
Yeah, I think if we were to have this conversation 6 weeks down the line, it'd be very different, wouldn't it? Because we'd be talking about players that have been bedded in. There'd be, we'd know what is working, what isn't working, and I feel like I've been given
there's still time left in the window. Sorry to interrupt you. There's still time left in the window. So, we might bring in like a brilliant second striker, absolute monster in midfield, and all of a sudden think, okay, I'll do look a bit better. But as come for Sunday, I don't think the squad is composed of players that are going to play the system the way Rooney wants to, and would be better and more productive in a slightly slightly reformatted system.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And even if we are in a situation now where either team pulls in another player, second striker, we're in the market for EK Ugbo was on loan with us until the end of the season, and as we're talking this evening, we're still 5 days out, and there are rumours that he's going to come, or he may be looking at going somewhere else. Even if he gets over the line now, he won't be involved on Sunday, bench at best. So there's a lot of movement still to be done between now and the end of August, and from a transfer activity point of view, all we've looked at the moment, bar the goalkeeper, is transfers. And I still think there's a hell of a lot of movement to be done around loan market players at Championship level. Once the Premier League starts to sort of settle down and players know where they are, that will filter down. And I think there's still another sort of key sort of aspect of things to be done in terms of getting those players now to get them secured in certain teams, and that will make certain teams within the Championship look very different come the start of September, won't it?
Yeah, I mean, for us specifically, Spurs have just finished their Far East tour. We had Alfie Devine and Phillips on loan last season. They did relatively well. I mean, it depends who you ask, but so those sort of discussions about them coming back won't have started really till now. There was talk of Jayden Danns coming from Liverpool, who maybe to fill that second striker hole, be perfect for that. But he's got a back injury, and Liverpool are also out on tour. They've not signed anybody, so you're right. Just talking from our perspective, there's big move. I mean, Jayden Danns would be an absolutely fantastic, probably be one of the top 5 signings of the past 25 years for Argyle, if not better than that, because he's you don't get minutes in cup finals, etc. and etc. for one of the top 10 teams in the world without being good, and that just transforms. That makes everything tick, like you say. We are kind of waiting on that, and it might, maybe I am being a little bit too pessimistic, or my badge is going a little bit too quickly. I should hold my nerve and wait out till the end of the month.
I couldn't not ask about one of Dan's favourites while I've got you on the pod. We had Lewis Gibson with us a couple of years ago, and he's much maligned by Dan. He loves a big shit kicker centre half. And just the question for Dan: how's he getting on? How are things with Lewis Gibson? Because he's a player that we really appreciated, although we didn't sort of see the best of him. How's he got on last season?
Our best defender last season, and he's our best centre back, arguably, to the point where he's been playing right centre back to allow Brendan Galloway to play left centre back, and we've got 2 fit right centre backs. So that tells you how good he is. I wouldn't say he's underrated because everybody rates him. Everybody says he's good, but it's just one of those where I don't think they appreciate just how good he is. Maldini always said, if I have to make a tackle, I've already done something wrong. And I feel like a lot of good defensive play is not quantitative. You can't tally it up. It's not a case of how many tackles you make, how many headed clearances you make. It's not. A lot of defensive work is done almost passively. And he's excellent at that. He's just his positioning, his ball playing. I think it was like the second game of the season, Southampton. We were like 2-1 down. They scored in injury time. And then literally like the 96th minute, he was down the left wing, putting an absolutely belting cross that sort of no one got on the end of it. He can just do everything. I thought, wow, this guy is, he is complete. And I think he's been able to flourish here. Like he maybe hasn't elsewhere. There was rumours of Luton coming in for him, depending on how their, business shook out this summer. And how concrete that was, I don't know. But some of the sources that were quoting it were quite reliable. So there must have been sort of questions asked at the very least. So, that's sort of like how much his stock has gone up from sort of coming to newly promoted Plymouth to potentially having interest from newly relegated Premier League team. Sort of tells you how well he did last season. And he's our best centre back. I mean, Galloway is a wonderful defender also, but just never fit. And if he deserves, the two of them are excellent, and it's a shame they both play in the left centre back slot, to be honest. But yeah, Lewis Gibson last season was colossal, and we wouldn't have stayed up without him.
Yeah. I don't want to speak for the 30,000 fans that are going to be there on Sunday, but I don't anticipate that he's going to get the worst reception. He left us with good grace. He just wasn't the right place at the right time, and he had a couple of injury problems that sort of hamstrung him a little bit. And then I think he went down to Bristol Rovers, didn't he? On the loan spell before sort of finding it to you. But yeah, he's held in sort of good regard. I wouldn't say high regard, but good regard by Wednesday for the bits that he did when he was with us a couple of years ago. Just on Wednesday, I don't know how much you've seen, you've looked at. Just curious to get a sort of an opposition fan's view on where we are at the moment, how things are looking for us as a team, as a squad, as a setup, as a Plymouth fan. What do you make of the stuff that's going on up at Hillsborough?
It's a weird one because I think there's certain teams I think we look at this season. I don't know if you'll agree with me, because I'll look stupid if you don't. But it teams like Coventry, who bedded in the end of last season after selling big players for them, and all of a sudden you're thinking this season, they can go. You could really make a fist of it. And I think there's a general consensus around certain teams like that. Whereas with you guys, it's very much like one of the lads on our pod, it went viral, said like, if you lose Roll, then you'll be, you'll struggle because, he's the difference maker. But personally speaking, I think you were underachieving with the squad you had before Roll. And I think you're overachieving with the squad you have with Roll. I mean, when you look at where he had you, was you like 9th or something? Since he came in, or post Christmas or something. Eighth. Yeah,
we'd have been 8th in a league that starts under Rule.
Yeah, and so that I don't think anyone could argue that squad is the 8th best squad in the league. So I mean, I don't know. You might want to argue that it is, but when you look at you got Leeds, Luton, Sheffield United, Coventry, Borough, you got teams with massive names in. I think that you'll be absolutely fine this season. You've improved the squad. Personally speaking, I think you've improved the squad. Rule has had enough time to sort of really bed his philosophy in. Players now have confidence, whereas it might have been shot at the beginning of last season. I don't see you guys being in any trouble at all. The big problem will be if you lose Rule and who comes in next, because someone can also do the same as Zisco and drag you down below the average. The squad as it is should be good enough to stay up, even with an bang average manager. I think your squad is now decent, and even if you're not overachieving, it's sort of aiming for like 9th or 10th, which you could, if like you say, there's no reason why you couldn't, because that's the form you were in. You want to aim for 8th, 9th, 10th quite easily, I should imagine. If you just carry on, all you've got to do is keep the momentum you had. If someone came in and just did average with you, you guys should be comfortably mid-table. The worry would be if you lost Rule and someone came and and Chancery made an absolute bat crazy bats in the belfry decision and brought in someone who another Zisco, and you end up dropping, and that would be that's the what's the sort of like that's the one thing in the back of the mind that says, where could it go wrong for Wednesday? I don't see you guys having any problems this season. I think you could predict Wednesday to finish anywhere between sort of like 8th or even challenging for playoffs and 20th, and you present a decent argument for it. I don't think you'll be. I think the bottom will probably be a few teams drop away. I don't think you'll be in that. But some people will say you will. It's a weird one because of, like us, in different ways, you've had a very volatile 2 or 3 years, and especially even just like the last 18 months. If you look at our last 18 months, we went from looking like we were going to comfortably stay up to being an absolute basket case to having a wonderful turnaround at the end of the season to then appointing Rooney, and it's like, well, what are you going to expect from Argyle? You can't actually draw any strong conclusions with any sincerity, and I think this kind of the same for Wednesday in that if things were to change for you, or you got a couple of key injuries, people could say, but I think you're in a much healthier position than us for sure. And I think that, again, speaking for myself, I don't see what you guys. I think you guys will be, mid-table or above, and I think you'll have a good start to the season. I suspect you're. If we came away with a draw on Sunday, I'd be absolutely delighted. I feel like you'll get a good start to the season and never be in trouble. The only risk will be if you lose Rule and make a dodgy appointment thereafter. I think. Other than that, I think you guys are looking good to consolidate. You've got the fan base, you've got the, all of that sort of stuff that Championship clubs kind of need to kick on. You're good for the telly and stuff. When I was a kid, you guys were up at the Sheffield, the Steel City Derby or whatever they call it on on Sky. That was Premier League fodder. It's sort of like you've got the storied history and stuff that people like to make PR with and make the TV noises with. You've got great ex-players that make great pundits and stuff. So you've got all the noise to be like marketable for like the Championship itself and for broadcasters. So you'll get interest from abroad, you'll get fans from abroad who haven't known about you perhaps, and all that if you stay and you start building an attractive brand of football in the Championship. So I don't think the future's bad for you. The only thing that you'll do is self-sabotage with the owner doing something crazy if Rule goes. The best thing for you, I think, would be for Rule to be involved in the next appointment. If Chancery has the brains to ask Rule, who's a good continuity appointment? Who do you feel has the same skills, the same talents, that you've brought to follow up to keep, and if he's got the brains to ask Rule's input and they can part on good terms and he accepts that he's going to go when the offer comes, and can do something like that, then you guys will be, should get a steady hand to the ship, to just continue where he's left off. The worry will be Chancery throws his toys out the pram and makes it difficult for Rule to leave. Rule's got no interest in helping Chancery. Chancery tries to save face by bringing in some big name who's failed elsewhere, but he's determined that he'll be right for Wednesday.
Like Rooney.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how
yeah, you've in that last sort of 2 minutes there, you've given me more sound bites that I could roll out every day for the rest of this week than I could have ever imagined. One final question before we sort of part ways. You said you'd be happy with a point. Can you give me a score prediction for Sunday?
Let's go 2-2. Teams getting used to themselves. Won't know what the opposition's really doing per se. You won't know what we're doing anyway, I don't reckon. Yeah, let's go for an optimistic 2-2.
I'm going to go 4. I'm going to stick my neck out, and I'm cautiously going to say that we'll probably nick it 2-1.
I thought you were going to say I'm going to say 4-0 when you said I'm going to go. Fair enough.
No,
I'm not got anything to contradict you with.
I'm the more pragmatic of the ones that we have on the pod. So yeah, the optimism in and around Sheffield Wednesday at the minute is stark, and it's all down to the manager and Chris Powell being in and the setup that we've got behind the scenes. And we've done some great transfer activity over the summer. We've got 9 lads over the line, and there's a lot of optimism around what we've brought in. We've brought Premier League quality in. We brought people in with a pedigree, and we've recruited well in the 2 windows that Rule's sort of overseen. We brought some good players in, and if we can get 1 or 2 more over the line before the end of the month, then I'm comfortable and confident that we, there's no reason why we can't bother that sort of upper end mid-table, anywhere between 6th and 10th. I think is a realistic target for us, and I'd take that based on the manager and the recruitment that we've done. So we'll see where we are. Ben, before you go, do you want to give your channels, your pod, a little bit of a plug?
Yeah, my handle's on screen. I don't know if that will be for the viewers to see, but the Argyle Life 1886 is the pod's handle. Go on there and give John abuse for saying you'll be going down if you lose rule. Yeah, and you could, if you're interested in watching the reaction to the game, you'll be able to find that on YouTube too. Argyle Life Green and White, the Green and White podcast by Argyle Life. You'll find us lamenting the 4-0 pasting you give us.
Brilliant, mate. And for regular viewers on YouTube and those that are listening on the pod, you just keep an eye on our socials. You can see on screen at the moment, all of our channels are all down there. It's the cheesy bit where we ask people to smash the like button and subscribe. Gets people sort of connecting with us. It helps with our algorithm and so forth. So please, it doesn't cost you anything. Give us a like, subscribe, jump on, follow us on socials. Everything's appreciated, and we're pretty active on there. Ben, really appreciate your time this evening, mate. Thank you very much. And
all the best after Sunday for the rest of the season.
You too, mate. And see you later.